online, on the TuneIn app, and on your smart speaker. Play Shock Radio.
This is Shock
News.
Hi, welcome to the Shock News Podcast. I'm Will Phillips. I'm joined by Thomas Sheehan and Noah Buckingham Reid. First up today, we're talking about Andy Burnham's £1 billion investment. Alice Roberts, tell us more.
The Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, has just recently announced a £1 billion investment into the Greater Manchester area. The Greater Manchester region has become the fastest growing part of the UK economy, with our area doubling in economic growth as opposed to other parts of the UK. There will be 3 projects in each of the area's 10 boroughs, creating 22,000 new jobs and 3,000 homes in each area.
I'd say that the new redevelopment scheme will work. I think it should work, but I think the homes need to be used effectively and the jobs that it creates need to be used effectively. And hopefully it goes better than some of Burnham's other schemes that he's done in the past. And I'd definitely say that the injection of money will benefit Manchester and the Greater Manchester area.
This investment will also aid the wider Salford Crescent redevelopment plan, adding to the £2.5 billion that the area of Salford already has for creating new spaces, homes and jobs and opportunities for students.
So first up, what do you think about it, Thomas?
I would say it's the £1 billion investment. It's good that obviously they're investing money, but are they the right areas? You never know. I mean, obviously, in places, you never. Oh, I don't know what to say. I mean, what do you think?
Well, look, it's a massive amount of money going into the area. £1 billion. There's a huge amount. It's all about Greater Manchester too. So this is a huge scope of areas. You're talking all the way out to Bolton, all the way back to the other side of Manchester in that way. And it does look like he's said that each borough has been asked to pick 3 priority projects, half of which are set to have funding approved at a meeting, which would happen sometime. I think it might have happened, already happened. But that's what it's going to be: 3 priority projects for each borough. So I think it's just going to see massive investment. I mean, what the major decisions have been in Manchester is building, so house building, new apartment blocks, things like that, modernising the housing in Greater Manchester. This should help sort of quickfire that. I think he spoke about there being sort of a poverty divide, a funding divide even within the city, even within Greater Manchester, more widely. So I think if he can really sort of, his aim is to cut that down. That £1 billion fund is going to aim to really cut that down.
Part of the scheme you talk about housing there, is to bring more affordable housing into specifically the Salford Crescent area. Obviously, that's the area that many students live in. How important do you think that will be?
I think that will be very important because obviously, as you said, student housing, not everyone can afford, obviously, coming to uni. It's expensive, so it's really important for students to be able to afford because they might want to join societies, everything like that. And you can't really do that if you live in London or anywhere in the south. So it's really important that in Salford Crescent that they make student housing available.
We talk about affordable housing. Affordable housing comes through the sort of a lot of housing being available. The more housing available, the demand is more. Well, the demand is less because people are in housing more, which means the prices can go down. Once those prices are down, it means people can afford to do things, they have more money in their pocket. And you were talking about students there. Students especially, if there's more accommodation, the accommodation prices go down naturally because there's less demand for them. They need to fill those spots. The prices go down. We've seen record highs in Manchester of student accommodation. If that starts to go down, especially in the Salford area, because we are seeing sort of different improvements. They've talked about the John Lester and Eddie Coleman buildings, which are set to be knocked down in terms of more. And what we really need to make sure is that it's affordable. So we talked about the housing, and like he's laid out, affordable housing is going to be massive for that. And I think especially around this area.
Definitely.
A big part of this new scheme is obviously taking money that's being generated by the city centre and then reinvesting it around the Greater Manchester area. Do you think that's fair that, you've got these big social hubs and economic hubs in the centre of the city that are earning the money, and then it's being dispersed outwardly towards the rest of Greater Manchester rather than perhaps just staying in those central areas?
Well, like he said, it's the north-south divide. He's brought in local leaders to do this. He's brought in a range of opinions. He knows that Greater Manchester it thrives in some areas and doesn't in others. Andy Burnham has been the mayor of equity around the Greater Manchester area. The reason he's been so successful, I think the reason people look up to him so much, is because he's been able to sort of pick out where those divides are, really bring in local leaders, really bring in people to both his campaign and through this run. And by diversifying where the money goes, you're not going to end up in somewhere like London, which needed a bit of a turnaround in terms of where that investment was going. You're not going to end up like somewhere like Birmingham, which has sort of massive wealth divides within those cities. Manchester aims to be one of these cities where you can really breathe money into all these areas which are in desperate need of support. We talked about Salford Crescent.
Yeah.
I think we'll see that, and how somewhere like here can become, somewhere which is not so city central friendly, and not somewhere maybe commuters who work in the city centre want to move out to somewhere where they can move out to.
Yeah.
It's really hard to talk about Andy Burnham at the moment, isn't it, without bringing up his ambition that he seems to be showing, or not showing, depending on who you ask, I suppose. But do you think that this is part of that, of his maybe longer-term ambition of making Greater Manchester the best it can be, so he appears as the best leader, so that, when the time comes that maybe if Labour are looking for a new leader of their party, he is the name that is being thrown around the most? Do you think that's part of it?
We're going to get onto the budget soon, but as we've seen is the lead up to the budget, massive internal infighting within government, massive sort of troubles with Labour internally, briefings with the media. What Andy Burnham has brought, in a sense, is an administrative way of operating as in sort of that position of power in a stable way, which also sort of engages the electorate. That's what Labour failed to do since they were elected last year. That's what they failed to really engage, and that's why their polling numbers are so low. You look at someone like Andy Burnham, and look at someone who can really engage those people, bring them in under his project, and show them what he's doing. This is another example. Great communications. This is everywhere in Manchester. Every sort of major northwest coverage is putting this first. £1 billion. That's a big number. People can look at that, and hopefully what they can now see is it reflected in their own communities.
Thomas, do you think that this is maybe part of Burnham's plea to the people to show how amazing he is, almost, to then hopefully later on become leader of the Labour Party and possibly Prime Minister?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, like you said, £1 billion, it's a lot of money. And yeah, it might get invested maybe in the right areas, maybe not. But yeah, I'd definitely say it's
a statement.
It's
a statement of intent.
Definitely.
And I know we're going to get onto the budget in a bit, but the Labour government have pledged £13 billion into 7 more mayors around the country. We're seeing this project work. We're also seeing the Greater Manchester Central Authorities, the GMCA. They said that new schemes are set to be approved every 6 months. That is called good communication, telling people what's going to happen, when it's going to happen. And I think that level of devolution could be what really saves the Labour Party. And maybe puts him in prime ministerial position, but we can't. It's tough to speculate on that, I think.
I mean, there was talk in the week of should the Labour MP drop out of their seat in order to let him run on it, wasn't there?
I think that was what was said, wasn't it? It's
yes, I believe there was an MP in Norwich
mm-hmm.
who was saying that he would consider dropping out if it meant that Burnham could run in his seat in his stead.
Do you think it could be a possibility that this Labour government could go almost so off the rails in a way that they need something so radical like that?
In my opinion, I think that Burnham is in a very comfortable seat where he is, and probably is happy to wait it out because he knows that he has got the backing of quite a few people. So he'd rather wait it out and wait for the perfect opportunity rather than jumping just because a lot of people are saying he should.
And just on that, he's actually at the forefront of the Labour and Cooperative Party. So he's been, a subsection of Labour people who have also been part of the Cooperative Party. One of the former frontman of that, Lloyd Russell Moyle, who was an MP down in Brighton, defected to the Green Party this week. The Cooperative Party have been sort of the base of the left-leaning bloc of Labour MPs in Parliament. Do you potentially see that there could be further defections and that could, damage his push to go into a position of power in Parliament?
I think it's hard to say this early. I think that what Andy Burnham might be thinking more so than perhaps Keir Starmer would be is that if he were to become the leader of the Labour Party, he would actually be interested in a coalition with the Greens. Because we've had Zach Polanski saying for a long time now he wants nothing to do with Starmer, but perhaps he would want something to do with Burnham. So I think that's probably something that we just have to wait and see and how that develops over time. And obviously there's a long time to go before the next general election, assuming that there's not one called early. So I think that is just one to watch, I suppose, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, sorry, just pulling up some numbers on this growth fund as well. The £400 million of the Greater Manchester Good Growth Fund already promises to deliver 3,000 new homes and more than 22,000 new jobs. So that includes investment in Oldham Town Centre, the Cottonwords project at Wigan Pier, and demolition of the Longfield Centre in Prestwich. So you can really see the actionable steps, and you'll see that across Greater
And
Manchester.
Oldham's not actually too far away from here.
No, it's not.
So it's already showing that growth.
And especially there, you might think maybe Andy Burnham's the Manchester guy, but when you're in a Wigan, you're in Oldham,
Wigan as
and you
well.
see that your town centre's being transformed. I think it instills trust in the local.
Yeah,
the local
definitely.
governance.
Showing that he cares, then, would you say?
Oh, right.
Yeah,
exactly.
definitely.
Right, next up, we've got soaring rents in Manchester has been reported recently. And the cost of renting a home in Manchester has been increasing in recent years. And actually, renters apparently are having to pay an extra £288 a month than they were in 2021. And that's across, on average, in Greater Manchester. What do we think is causing that? How do we think that can be changed?
And how, well, the things causing it, we know we've talked about the general government and the problems. And like I said, we're going to get onto this budget and we'll talk about it. But yeah, rent prices are a massive thing that we've talked about. Potential further landlord controls to give power to tenants. We talked about, caps on things. They've actually today in the budget just, I believe it's VAT on landlords, which landlords weren't paying before. So, even their potential tenants who were earning 25 grand a year, and they were earning 25 grand a year as a landlord, they weren't paying the same in taxes because of landlord reliefs. That can be changed. Obviously, we talked about massive aims to build houses in Manchester. When that supply goes up, the demand comes down and therefore prices drop too. So I think that is what they'll be looking at to potentially fix this. Yeah, a problem, but a fixable one, I think. I think they'll view it as a fixable one.
Salford specifically has had a £338 average increase per month since 2021. So one of the hardest hit areas by this increase over time. Do you think you could put as a reason why that could be hitting Salford specifically so hard?
I would say it's hitting Salford because obviously it's quite a deprived area. Going back to what I said about uni students, not everyone's going to be able to afford it. Coming up from London and coming up from Scotland, you might not be able to afford to even come to university to have the full experience. So it is going to affect you 100%. Yet 18 years old, you're not going to have a lot of money. So yeah, it's going to affect them dramatically.
They'll almost see it as a natural part of a growing city. That vast demand for housing going up can be seen as a positive because the economy is growing and the house building and the investment in Manchester City is justified by the fact that we're seeing such growth, both in population, both in students who bring things to the city. So we were talking about how we can possibly combat this in Salford generally. I think, like we said, Andy Burnham's been one to push for more social housing. That's something not really outlined by the Labour government. Building more social housing, things that people can go into, provided by the government on building. I mean, I just don't feel like enough's being done to help people who can't pay the rent by not building enough social housing.
I think that if we were to say a reason why, in my opinion, that we could see these obviously dramatic rent increases of, I think, a 42% increase is what has been recorded apparently. I think it probably is down to what you say, that massive economic growth that's in Salford. An area that historically maybe has been on the poorer side of things is getting massive investment because of places like Media City and things in the Keys that is driving the price up because you've got a lot of people now coming up to Salford because of Media City and other places like it, because it's such an area of growth. It's driving the demand of housing in the area, and hence why the rent in the area is increasing so much. And I think that's a really interesting thing to talk about because that does mean people who've maybe lived in Salford all their lives aren't able to afford their own homes anymore because you've got people from London and the south and people from the north of Manchester, obviously in Scotland, like you say, and across the country coming to Salford now because of this. This cultural hub it's becoming, especially for the media industry, is driving these prices up.
What we don't want is for people to not feel like they can afford to live in their own homes anymore, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a thing of we need to build more homes for people coming here in a way, but also making sure that we keep this down, that the rental controls are in place, that's pushed through, for the sake of people in Manchester being able to afford to live here, where they're from.
Exactly. Now, the biggest story of today, obviously, is the budget. Rachel Reeves had her speech earlier today, and she outlined some of her proposals and some of the new policy that's going to be coming in. Noah, what can you tell us?
It's been a day. It's been a day.
Today has been a week.
It's been a week. It's been many weeks actually.
Yes.
This has been more of a topic than it's maybe ever been. Traditionally, the Chancellor, you don't find out much about the budget. The Chancellor stands up in front of the House. These major economic changes are revealed to the House on the day. The House hears it first. The elected representatives of this country hear it first. That's not been the case with this Labour budget. It's been full of briefings, like we spoke about just briefly before, for weeks and weeks, months now. And it's finally got to today. And today has been quite a mess for the Labour government too. We found out probably, maybe 2 hours before, when we get the official OBR report on the budget, what everything basically they listed out, everything that was on the budget and their outlook from that. So the OBR, that was the big first major scandal of the day, was the OBR leak of that report. Then we actually get to the budget, and it is full of lots of expected things, as we said. The things which were revealed earlier in the week, such as the train fares, price cap on the regulated train fares, so that's going to be frozen. The two-child benefit cap, which we thought was coming and was coming. We've seen cuts in different areas and big increases in different areas. But we're going to talk about our local MP to start. We're going to go with the two-child benefit cap and Rebecca Long-Bailey, who has tweeted out many things and spoken quite widely about her support and actually face consequences in the party for it.
Yes, obviously Rebecca Long-Bailey was suspended last year for calling for the two-child benefit to be scrapped. And now, nearly a year on, I believe, or over just as quite a while on, it has now come out that they are deciding to scrap it. How do we think that Rebecca Long-Bailey is feeling right now?
I imagine she's feeling justified and quite hard done by the party. We talked about the left of the party being quite a hard pressure, maybe enabled by the rise of the Greens and being able to having to combat that, a resurgent left force electorate in the country actually widely. But I think it is a sign of what this Labour government is deciding to do. I think they'll take it as a win today. They've marketed this sort of budget as something that these left-leaning MPs, Labour backbenchers, can really sort of sell on the doorstep. This is one of those major things they can really sell on the doorstep. Two-child benefit cap is something that they actually, many Labour MPs said in their sort of statement, should have never come in anyway. And it was something completely antithetical to Labour thinking in all ways. And the fact it's gone now is, yeah.
Thomas, how do you think it will affect things now that benefit has been scrapped?
Obviously, it's awful because, like, families, what about if they rely on that benefit cap? Like, they're just going to have no income to support their children, which is just awful.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. So, no, would you like to explain to people who maybe don't know at home what the child benefit is, just to be...
Well, I'm just going to pull up the Rebecca Long-Bailey tweet I wanted to reference.
Oh, of course,
before.
yes, of course.
She called it, well, she first of all called it a cruel, the two-child cap was cruel, and she's now called it destructive and has said well done to Rachel Reeves for taking those steps. But yes, the two-child benefit cap, so it's brought in under the Cameron government. Essentially, they wanted to save money at that point. It's going to save £2-3 billion, they expected it to save. And what it essentially was that anybody receiving child benefits for their children, to support their children, they would no longer receive child benefits after their third child. So the first two children, they'd be supported by the government with child benefits. Third children and any children beyond that would no longer receive any benefits for it. What they cited this at was that they wanted to make this as sort of a behavioural change in the country, an attitude change in the country, if you will. But what it didn't do is change any of the numbers. So it actually pretty much stabilised from that point of how many children people are having. They are having the same amount of children, 3, 4 maybe, when it got enacted. That behaviour didn't change after it came in. So what it has seen now is it's plunged over 1 million children across the UK into poverty when they otherwise wouldn't be. It comes at a massive cost to the Labour government to change it. They're having to really fund any change they made, that £2-3 billion, which we spoke about. But they're finding it, and I think it's going to really appeal to these sort of Labour backbenchers who really wanted to push this through.
So obviously, if we speak about every policy that was come out,
it'd be too much.
We will be
too much.
Yeah,
we'll be
but I think another one that I think is important to mention, especially for people viewing our podcast, is that the train fares have been frozen. Now, obviously, a lot of the people watching this will be at university and coming from far, and a lot of them will usually be getting the train to and from home when visiting home for summer or Christmas, or just visiting for the weekend perhaps. And obviously, train travel is such an integral part of this country's system of getting to places. So that, and obviously prices of those tickets has just been so high recently. There's been a lot of calls for them to be decreased, or for them to at least be stopped. And we are seeing now that those train fares have been frozen. How do we think people will respond to that?
Yeah, massive change, really.
It's massive. Like, obviously, like you said, like, if people going home at the weekend and people can't afford it, especially on, like, where I'm from on Sundays, like, trains aren't running, and it's just, you either have to pay like a rail replacement, and you can't actually afford to go home.
And the prices are crazy.
Yeah.
They're absolutely insane. It's worth noting that a lot of people uni students might not be affected by it, but I would say commuters. So this is a freeze on regulated rail fares, which is expected to really affect thousands coming through Salford's two busiest stations, Salford Central and Salford Crescent. Massive. They're both having sort of construction work on them done recently, millions and millions of pounds pumped into that. I think that's a testament to how many people are still using the trains, and what the Labour government decided to do was try and support those people, the millions, who do use the trains, and encourage them to use public transport. It's a green thing as much as it is an affordability thing. So what this actually will do is that regulated fares include most walk-up fares, so you go up and buy a ticket, one destination to the other, anytime, day singles, day returns, they will come under regulated. The other thing that come under regulated is season tickets. So a lot of commuters, so people maybe living in Bolton, Wigan, on the lines that come through Salford Crescent, they will be using season tickets to come into Manchester, come into Salford, go to their workplace, Media City, things like that, cutting off the train, that sort of thing. That is a massive change for them. I think it's massive. This expected to save hundreds and hundreds of pounds. It's going to freeze. It's not maybe enough to say that it's going to really cut people's prices. Not anything which is going to really cut down on train fares, but it will freeze them. I think that's the first step to take.
Do you think it will bother people, the fact that they haven't, it is only those regulated trips, like I said earlier, about how those students who do travel, like you said, it won't actually affect them all that much. As much the headline will be that the train fare has been frozen, but in actual fact, it's only for a very small minority of trains.
I'm going to say my own personal research, when I was looking at Manchester trains to London, Manchester to London for me, they come under advanced singles, so usually you buy them a couple of days out even, they still are under advanced singles. They are unregulated. They're regulated by the train companies. Obviously, they still run on network rail lines, which are state-owned, and that's where the regulated fares are in. But those prices can still go up, and they will go up, probably. Yeah. What they have indicated is that basically regulated fares, and last year they went up 5%, 5.1%, and unregulated fares went up in line with them. They're expecting that if they freeze them, so no percentage increase, that the unregulated fares will level out with them. Whether it will happen, we'll see, but I think that's definitely something which to look at, and we can look at that and hold the government to that. So
specifically for university students, would you say then that it's maybe not as big of a win as it first appears?
Well, I think when you read the headline, rail fares are frozen, it feels like that's going to be huge. What it won't change is that if it costs, £10, whatever it is to go, I'm not sure it's that much, but one of the Salford stations, return into Manchester and back, or from example maybe Wigan or Bolton on the train, it costs £8-10 to get into Manchester. That price won't change. It won't go down, but it also won't go up. I think that's what people have seen in the last few years, that it went from maybe £5 and now it's £10. What you won't see from now to the next 5 years, that go from 10 to 15, you'll see that remain at 10, stabilise at 10.
Now, what do you think is the biggest part of the budget, in your opinion?
The biggest part...
The biggest change, I should say. What new policy has been implemented that you think will have the most people talking? And
well,
Thomas,
I'd say obviously...
You feel free to share as well.
Obviously, personal taxation is one where everyone was looking. They said they were going to have income tax increase. Income tax did not increase. What they have done instead is frozen the income tax thresholds for an extra 3 years beyond 2028, which will drag more people into higher bands over time. I don't want to go too into economics or anything, but that's sort of under label of fiscal drag. So anybody which is earning a number now, they're going to be dragged up into the higher tax brackets due to inflation and wage increases without actually earning any more in real money. So even though maybe they're earning 35 and they'll be earning 40, it drags them into a higher tax bracket, but inflation has made that number exactly equivalent. It's really tough. I think that will be the thing people are looking at. Like, a lot of people, especially Labour voters who are traditionally and actually were in the last election mostly urban, middle class voters in cities, so urban. They're those voters, and they're going to be the ones actually really hit by this. You can look at a few other things like minimum wage going up. So for students, I think this is important.
Yeah.
Anybody working alongside their studies. So 18 to 20-year-olds, we saw it go up £10 the last budget. It's now up to £10.85. Over 21's £12.21, now up to £12.71. Over time, that's
it's going up.
It puts more money in your bank account.
Thomas, what do you think is the biggest policy? Would you say it is the minimum wage change, in your opinion, for students anyway?
I'd say for students, yeah, 100%. Like, minimum wage going up, yeah, things are becoming pricey, so it's really important that students in particular can afford to live, so then they can afford, like you said, like going back to what we said about accommodation, so then they can afford housing as well as you know, being able to buy groceries,
just general life
just
things.
general necessities.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, obviously a lot of students will be working part-time jobs as a way to help them pay for their way through their studies, because, you know, unfortunately maintenance will only go so far a lot of the time, especially for a lot of students.
Honestly.
So those part-time jobs are vital, and the increase in that minimum wage, in line with inflation, but perhaps hopefully a bigger increase than we've seen in recent years. Would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Sure. And I think it's really going to hit people, this one, especially among students, and that's what we really think. Most people look at these things and look at growth figures and not really understand how they affect them. But what you can really feel is that minimum wage going up and income tax thresholds being frozen, people will really feel that on the ground. We've also seen there's big announcements on investments across the UK. 7 city mayors, like we talked about, we've given 12 billion across the 7, more spending across countries, not just England. So there's at least 820 up to Scotland. I think it's about 500 down to Wales and 300 up to Northern Ireland. So there's big investments going into other countries around the UK. The other thing, 3p per mile tax on electric cars. There's a few levers which they've pulled, which are, you know, going to affect certain people and not others. What do you think of that?
I think that 3p per mile tax is very, very expensive. Because, like, going back to what you said, like, what if, like, electric cars, they're still new. Like, how long have
I think the fear is it might push people away from driving electric cars.
Yeah, and, like, I mean, how long have electric cars actually been around, would you say?
But realistically, not that long in the scale of how long cars have been such a normality in life, yeah.
And
you think the cars have been around for well over 100 years now,
Yeah.
probably. Electric cars have only probably become the mainstream, and you've seen more often on the road. Maybe in the last 20, I think even that has probably been quite lenient. So yeah, you're right, it's definitely a new thing that people have to adapt to.
And just as we're pushing
from electric cars.
For electric cars and green energy and transitions towards renewable, what this budget has done is actually push investment away from that.
Yeah, literally. Like, you want to go, you need to go, because they've stopped diesel cars, and like, let's go to electric. Actually, you're gonna have to pay 3p per mile. That's ridiculous.
No, yeah, it is. And I think that is one policy that will get a lot of people talking.
I think what people might argue back about that, and just so we can, for balance, I think the government would reply in that situation is that electric cars are generally by higher earning people, because electric cars are only basically available new. So you have to buy them new. There's not really an abundance of second-hand electric cars. So therefore, I think they believe that people can pay that. But I think this is pretty much a budget which attacks anything which is sort of owning to the left and eco side. We talked about how they sort of gave into more of some of the left leaning Labour MPs pushes for certain policies, but definitely not on anything green. They have pushed some investment in nuclear. But that's not really. They pushed the money away from green levies. The warm home insulation fund that's gone. That's been cut. And this as well. The 3p on electric cars. A lot of things pushing away. The Green Party have come out against nuclear pushes for nuclear energy. I just think there could be a bit of a gap opening up, and whether the Greens can now lean into the fact that Labour are no longer the party of renewable energy and green sources.
A lot to talk about there, obviously, with the budget but that is, if we were to talk about every new policy,
You'd go on all day, Will.
We'll be
We'd go
there
all day.
all day.
3-hour show. We'd have a 3-hour show.
Don't mind it, should we do it?
So next up, we are going to talk about the fact that the BBC Sports Personality of the Year is going to be returning to Media City on December the 18th. The award show will be going ahead. What do we think about that, guys? Coming back to the Media City for the 5th time.
I think it's really good. Coming back to Media City, it's showing that Manchester is a place for media, which is so important. Like we said earlier about how rents are rising because of the investment in Media City, but it's showcasing that Media City is an important place.
It's the place to be.
The place to be.
It's the place to be. Who do you think will win Sports Personality of the Year?
Does she count as a sports personality? Just because I read on here that the hosts are going to be Alex Scott, Gabby Logan and Claire Balding.
Yes.
So Alex Scott back from the Jungle, Claire Balding back from the Traitor's Castle.
Mm-hmm.
I want one of them to do it, but yeah, realistically, on the prospects of a sports personality of the year, I could not tell you. Have you got anybody in mind?
I've not actually seen the lineup yet, but
Who won it last year? Did Luke Littler win it last year?
I think
he might have done actually.
Yeah, might
But like that is a very strong lineup for hosts.
Yeah,
It was Keely Hodgkinson actually won it last year.
Ah, okay.
She is an Olympic champion.
Ooh,
So
in
not
what?
quite Luke Littler.
In what?
Do we have nominees for this year?
I can try and find some. I can try.
No,
I
it'll
don't
be
know
it'll
if
be
that's been
someone from
announced
the
yet.
England squad. Actually, it'll be a. God, it's got to be someone England related, but we've not really done anything yet. So
No.
I suppose we'll see. We can talk about that one on the sports show. Tune in.
Yes, that's 6 till 7 on Shock Radio. That has been the news podcast for today. I've been Will Phillips with.
I've been Thomas Sheehan.
And I've been Noah Buckingham. It's been an honour to be here.
Thank you so much
Thank
for watching.
you.